It has now been 11 days since the Israel-Hamas war began. Our next guest just introduced a bill that aims to prevent Iran from accessing billions of dollars in frozen assets that were made available to the country as part of that U.S. prisoner exchange last month. NBC News reported last week that a Treasury Department official did tell House Democrats that the U.S. and Qatar had agreed not to let Iran access the funds. Joining us now, South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee and is a 2024 candidate for president. Obviously, and Senator, good to see you again, have you on Squawk Box again this morning. Man, I remember the Shah, Senator. This place has been a thorn in our side and a problem for decades. And
absolutely.
Sometimes, you know, the idea that we need to engage with our enemies, sometimes that seems like the appropriate tack. Other times it's like, what are we trying to do when it's a country that wants to destroy Israel and wants to destroy us? Have we mismanaged it in recent years?
We have. I mean, one of the things that you've seen in the last couple of years is the weakness of President Biden leads to conflict across the world. Frankly, you hear his comments, whether it's a small incursion in Ukraine might be okay. Don't attack these areas from a cyber perspective, as he's talking to Putin. And then you watch what happens with Israel. Hamas attacks the bloodiest day since the Yom Kippur War. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder with no daylight with our allies. The world needs to know that we are loyal to our allies and we will be lethal to our adversaries. And that's been missing for the last couple of years. And frankly, the hostage payment of $6 billion. You know, Joe, I said it under the Obama administration. When he paid $400 million for hostages, you will only increase the price on every American life abroad, and now we see $6 billion. So the first misstep is paying a ransom. The second misstep is not realizing you cannot make a good deal with a bad actor, and Iran is a bad actor. 90% of the money that goes to Hamas comes from Iran. After the attack, Hamas thanks Iran. Freezing those assets actually will save lives. We must not only stop there, we must go one step further and have the Secretary of the Treasury, that's why I'm leading on this bill, having the Secretary of the Treasury report on all assets Iran has over $5 million so that we can target them and then extend, finally, my legislation from May extends the sunset. We make it permanent, sanctions on the energy sector in Iran. They must feel the price. And
plenty of blame, I guess, to go around. Republicans picked a bad time to, be basically unable to fund Israel and Ukraine, regardless of I see people go back and forth about how much more aid we should give to Ukraine, but we're not giving aid to anyone, even to Israel at this point, because of this. What's happening in the House on the GOP side of things, Senator.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I would suggest if I were president of the United States, I would be calling on my party to have a Speaker Protim, make Patrick McHenry the Speaker Protim, so that business can be done in the House. It's, frankly, 221 members, Republicans. We need 218 to choose a speaker. Why don't we get the people's business done by making Patrick McHenry at least the Speaker Pro Tem so legislation can move, so that the funding apparatus that will be necessary to support Israel has a path forward, get it to the Senate, and let the president sign it. There are things that can be done as a stopgap measure to make sure that the House continues to function. If I were the president, I would be at the microphone telling the party, let's remember, the road to socialism runs right through the divides in the Republican Party. Get the people's house in order. And then I would, frankly, encourage a changing of the rules. Having 4% of your Congress able to eliminate your speaker is probably bad decisions after bad decisions, even into the future. Senator,
you were early on mentioned frequently as maybe a viable alternative to former President Trump. I don't know what you need to do. You have a PAC. I like the name. It's Trust in the Mission, but it stands for Tim. so your Tim PAC, Super PAC,
yes,
they're not going to spend any more money on TV. They're going to focus on grassroots. But in explaining why they're doing it, they're not even really blaming you or talking about your prospects. You haven't qualified for the next debate. You're in maybe in some of the early states, you're as high as 6%, but low single digits nationally. And your South Carolina colleague is ahead. And they're just saying at this point, no one's focused or ready for a Trump alternative. And this is a direct quote from the co-chair of the Super PAC. We're doing what would be obvious in the business world. We're not going to waste our money when the electorate isn't focused or ready for a Trump alternative. What needs to be done? Maybe could Republicans coalesce around one person if there was a smaller field? And do you need to drop out?
Well, obviously, I'm in for the long run without any question. I don't know. I trust Senator Cory Gardner. I chose him to run the Super PAC. He's doing a good job. One of the things that we've realized throughout the last several days is breaking through in any of the media with any campaign material is just useless. Why waste those resources when you can save them for the end of the campaign when you will have the opportunity to break through? Knowing that and knowing that the number one job that we can do right now is support Israel, we know that every news cycle, we're going to focus on our job and our responsibility to lead on sanctions legislation, to lead on closing the southern border, or at least let us freeze the assets and provide sanctions to the Council of the Mexican Cartels. These are things that I can lead on right now in this challenging time in our nation. We're using those resources when they will count the most in late December and early January is a good decision. My assumption is that is a decision being made by my Super PAC. More importantly, making sure that America, the entire nation, leans into support for Israel is something we should all focus on right now because it's the only thing that's mattering, and that's the one thing that breaks through in all the news cycles is making sure that America understands that all of our leaders should be standing shoulder to shoulder and back to back with Israel.
Senator, do you, and see, this is where you get in a tough position, do you think that this would not have happened under former President Trump? And if you think that, then it's kind of like a campaign ad for him. Or would you say, is there something to the madness of King George to have a regime where our enemies are so afraid because anything's possible from the leader that they don't? I mean, there is something to be said for that. Someone can be so unpredictable that they're afraid to do anything. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, we could have a president who remembers Ronald Reagan, peace through strength. It works. You don't have to have someone who's volatile to lead our country. You actually do better with someone who's optimistic and positive, anchored in conservatism, who understands the Reagan doctrine of peace through strength. I would be that president. Having someone who has no daylight, someone who's not negotiating with Iran for a new nuclear deal, someone who's not talking to Putin and saying to him, hey, here's things that we wish you would not do in our country. Love the president. We need strong leadership with a backbone that speaks clearly, consistently, and concisely as it relates to the issues and the topics that will protect the American people and encourage opportunities around the world through our leadership.
Sounds good. All these things. We'll see whether it starts resonating, Senator. We are in crazy times, are we not?
We are indeed. We are indeed.
We are. All right. Well, good luck. Good to have you on, as always, Senator. Squawk Box will be right back.